My name is Lucia, and for a very long time, I believed I was living in a fairy tale. I was 38 years old. I was a published author and lived in an apartment in an old building in Mexico City. I lived with my husband, Emilio, a financial consultant whose voice could melt my stress in seconds. He had a way of saying my name, soft and slow, like a promise. Every morning started with a kiss on the forehead and coffee, just how I liked it. Every night ended with him whispering, "You are my world." I believed him until one night, when everything changed. It was close to midnight. I woke up and the bed was empty. At first, I assumed Emilio had gone downstairs for a snack or to check something. I turned over, thinking I would fall back asleep. Then I heard it. A voice. His voice. It came from his home office. It was low, serious, and calculated. "She still suspects nothing," he said. I froze for a moment. I could not breathe. The air felt thick, and my heart began to beat like a drum in my chest. I sat up, listening more closely. "Everything is going according to plan. We are almost finished," he continued. I walked on tiptoes toward the hallway, pressing myself against the wall next to his office door. A thin line of light escaped through the crack. I barely heard the rest, but I did not need to. I had heard enough. I went back quietly to bed and stayed as still as possible. I pretended to sleep when Emilio returned a few minutes later. He got into bed with the same practiced calm, pulling the blanket over both of us, as if he had not just destroyed my world. I did not sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling with my mind racing. I did not know what he was planning, but I knew one thing for certain. My husband was hiding something, and it involved me. The next morning, I moved through the kitchen like a ghost. Emilio was still asleep, breathing slowly and evenly. I stood in front of the coffee maker, my hands shaking as I reached for my phone. Until that moment, I had never checked our finances. Emilio always took care of everything: receipts, savings, investments. I trusted him. I thought that was what a good wife did, but I was learning that trust could be the first step to losing everything. I opened the bank application. My breath caught in my throat. Transaction after transaction flashed on the screen. 10,000 here, 20,000 there, 15,000, 40,000. Dozens of withdrawals over the last 3 months. Nothing huge on its own, but together they drew a very ugly picture. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, trying to hold myself up. Then I heard his voice behind me. "Checking the account so early?" Emilio's tone sounded casual, but I saw a flash of surprise in his eyes as he leaned against the doorframe and rubbed the back of his neck. "Just out of curiosity," I said, trying to sound unconcerned. "Some of these charges look unfamiliar." He walked toward the coffee maker, poured himself a cup, and gave me a practiced smile. "Ah, those are just some small investments. I must have forgotten to mention them to you." He took a sip without looking me in the eyes. Something inside me broke. It was not anger yet. It was something colder and sharper. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept his explanation, but I was already observing him, not with love or trust, but with clarity. Every shrug, every deflection was another crack in the image I had believed in. That night, I noticed more things. He was glued to his phone all the time. He always left it face down. He always stepped out to answer calls. When I asked what he was working on, he smiled and said, "Just business, nothing to worry about." But I was deeply worried, and that worry was turning into determination. I was not going to wait to discover what he planned. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. 2 days later, I had my chance. It was a quiet night. Emilio had just finished dinner and said he was going to take a shower. Normally, he took his phone everywhere, as if it were an extension of his body. But that night, for the first time, he left it on the dining table. I stared at it. My heart pounded in my chest like a warning bell. I waited 30 seconds, then 60. I heard the water running upstairs, and I reached out. His phone was unlocked. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through recent messages. Most were harmless, work reminders, casual chats. But then, a message thread stood out. It had no contact name, only a number. The most recent message read, Send the files and Luis. Just make sure she stays in the dark. Almost finished. I froze. I read the message again and again, my mind racing. Files, Luis, and make sure she stays in the dark. Who was she? It was me. He was sending someone something about me. My stomach turned. I put the phone back exactly where it was, careful not to move anything. Then I walked to the kitchen, splashed cold water on my face, and tried to slow my breathing. The sound of the shower continued. I had a few more minutes, but I could not stop thinking. Emilio was not just lying or cheating. He was planning something big, and I was the target. Later that night, when he got into bed, he kissed my forehead as always. "Are you okay?" he asked with a soft voice. I nodded and smiled barely, acting tired. Inside, I was screaming. He did not know I had seen the message. He still believed I was in the dark. That was his mistake, and I planned to use it. The next morning, as soon as Emilio left for work, I called Esme. Esme was not just my best friend from university. She was also a brilliant lawyer specializing in estate law and trusts. We had lost touch for a few years, but we had reconnected last summer over coffee. I never imagined I would call her for this. When she answered, I did not waste time. My voice shook as I told her everything. Emilio's late nights, the whispers, the hidden transactions, the message about the files, and Luis. She listened in silence. When I finished, she asked only one question. "How much money are we talking about?" "Close to 500 million pesos, I said. There was a pause. Then her voice returned, firm and clear. "Lucia, we have to move your assets now." I felt my knees go weak, so I sat on the edge of the sofa. "Are you sure?" I whispered. "Yes. If you wait, he is going to make his next move. We are going to create a trust in your name. It will be legally protected. He won't be able to touch a single cent." I swallowed hard. The apartment, the savings, the royalties from my books, the investments, everything I had worked for was at stake. "I'm in," I said. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind of documents, signatures, and calls. Esme worked like a machine and brought in her team. We transferred the deed of the apartment to the trust, secured the investment accounts, and moved every asset under my personal legal protection. By the time Emilio arrived home on the third day, I had already done what I never thought I would have to do to defend myself from the man I once trusted with my life. He walked through the door carrying takeout food, wearing his usual charming smile. "I thought we could have Thai food tonight," he said cheerfully. I nodded and took the bag from his hand. He had no idea that everything had changed. The papers were signed, the money moved, the fortress built. He could try whatever he wanted, but he would never get close to my assets again. I did not plan to warn him, let him believe I was still asleep, let him make his next move, because now I was ready. 4 days later, Emilio made his move. It was a Friday afternoon. He arrived earlier than usual, dressed in one of his tailored suits. He looked calm, almost pleased, as he set down his briefcase and sat across from me at the dining table. "We have to talk," he said, sliding a folder toward me. I did not flinch. I opened it slowly, revealing the documents inside. Divorce papers. "I think it is for the best," he continued with a rehearsed voice. "We have grown apart. I don't want this to become more painful." I looked at him, keeping my face unreadable. "Really?" I asked. He hesitated for a second, enough for me to see the flash of uncertainty behind his eyes. Then he nodded. "Yes, it is better this way." I took a breath and pushed the folder back toward him. "Before we continue, there is something you should know." His eyebrows furrowed. "What?" I leaned forward just slightly. My voice came out calm, clear, and deliberate. "I already moved everything." He blinked. "What?" "The apartment, the accounts, the royalties, everything. It is in a protected trust. You cannot touch it." The color drained from his face. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said with a firm tone, "that you are not going to walk in here, hand me some divorce papers, and leave with half of my life." He clenched his jaw. His hand closed on the edge of the folder. "You cannot do that." "I already did." He looked at me for a long moment, searching for some sign of weakness, but I gave him none. "You were right about one thing," I said quietly. "Life is unpredictable." He leaned back and stood up slowly. "I will see you in family court," he said, his voice cold and sharp. I smiled and stood up too. "Then go ahead. Try it." He left the room, and for the first time in weeks, I exhaled. Now he knew. I was no longer the woman he could manipulate. I thought the worst had passed. I was wrong. 3 days after Emilio stormed out, I noticed something strange at work. Whispers, sideways glances. Colleagues who normally greeted me warmly suddenly avoided eye contact. It was not paranoia, it was too constant. Then my assistant, Amira, walked into my office. She looked pale and was holding a printed paper. "I think you need to see this." It was a screenshot of an anonymous online forum. The post was titled, "Financial Director Hides Funds During Divorce Using Company Money." Below was a paragraph accusing an unnamed executive of diverting resources to protect herself in a divorce, implying criminal activity. In the comments, someone made it specific. "I know who it is. Lucia. Investigate her." I felt the blood leave my face. Emilio. He was behind this. I felt it in my bones. "He is trying to destroy me," I whispered. Amira nodded solemnly. "If this spreads, it can damage your reputation, or worse." I stood up and began to pace. I had spent years building my name and my credibility. I had climbed every step on my own merit, without shortcuts, without favors. Now a lie could break it all. "I need to call Esme," I said, grabbing my phone. That night, I sat across from Esme in her office. She listened as I described what was happening, my voice trembling between fear and fury. "This is no longer just personal," I said. "He is trying to destroy me professionally." Esme leaned back, joining her fingers. "He is playing dirty," she said. "He is trying to force you into a settlement. He wants to scare you so you give up." I looked her straight in the eyes. "I am not backing down." She nodded, already drafting a letter. First step, a formal demand that he immediately stop the defamation. If he pushes this further, we will sue for moral damages and harm to your reputation. A small spark of hope lit up inside me. He wanted to wear me down with lies, but he had underestimated one thing. I was not afraid of the truth, and I was not going anywhere. Just when I thought I had seen all of Emilio's tricks, he sank even lower. 3 days later, Esme summoned me to her office. Her tone was sharp and serious. "He just filed a lawsuit," she said when I entered. "He is accusing you of financial fraud." My heart sank. "What does it say?" "That you moved marital assets illegally. He alleges that you diverted resources from joint accounts." I slumped into the chair in front of her. "He cannot be serious." "He is," Esme said gravely, "and there is more." She slid a file across the desk. "He is not alone. He filed the lawsuit with a co-plaintiff." I opened the folder. The name hit me like a punch in the stomach. Luis. It was the name from the message I had read on Emilio's phone. "Who is he?" I asked. Esme crossed her arms. "A known fraudster. He has been linked to several cases of forged documents. No convictions yet, but a long trail of suspicion." I turned the pages. They were detailed, full of figures and fake transactions. Some even imitated my signature. "These are not mine," I said, my voice rising. "This is made up." Esme nodded. "We know, but we have to prove it, and fast." I squeezed my hands into fists. All the fear I had carried turned into fire. "He is trying to bury me in lies again." Esme's eyes sharpened. "Then we are going to make sure those lies collapse on top of him." She handed the file to a forensic accounting expert. For the next week, we worked nonstop. We gathered real records, tracked digital footprints, and verified every move I had made. I barely slept, but I kept going. It was no longer just about money. It was about my name, my integrity, and my right to defend what was mine. By the end of the week, we had everything we needed. The expert traced the fake documents back to Luis. The dates did not match. The signatures had inconsistencies, and most importantly, there was no paper trail connecting those invented transactions to any of my real accounts. Emilio had thrown everything at me, but the truth was stronger, and it was on my side. 1 month later, we entered the courtroom. Esme was calm, sharp as always. I sat beside her, dressed in navy blue, with my shoulders straight and my hands steady. On the other side of the room, Emilio looked like a shadow of the man I had known, angry, nervous, unprepared. The judge reviewed the case carefully. Our documentation was flawless. Luis never showed up. The moment the ruling was read aloud, I closed my eyes, not out of relief, but for closure. The court dismissed Emilio's claims. He was denied access to any part of my trust. His defamation tactics backfired, and instead of gaining anything, he was ordered to cover my legal fees and court costs. After the hearing, he tried to approach me in the hallway. "You didn't have to do this," he said quietly. I looked him straight in the eyes. "No, Emilio, you didn't have to do this." I walked away forever. In the following weeks, I picked up the pieces of my life slowly and carefully. I went back to writing. I took long walks in the Chapultepec forest. I let silence replace the chaos. I did not celebrate. I reflected. Because victory does not always feel like joy. Sometimes it feels like peace after a storm. Sometimes it is just the absence of fear. I learned something in all of this, something every woman should know. Trust is a gift, but control over your life is a right. No matter how loving a person seems, never give away your power blindly. Know your worth, protect your future. Be capable of acting before it is too late, and if one day someone tries to break you with betrayal, stay standing. Stay standing and let the truth speak louder than revenge. If you are still here, thank you. And if this story resonated with you, share it. Let other people know they are not alone. Because strength is not just surviving the storm, it is learning to own the sky afterwards.